Hi, welcome back to Wooden Sticks. We are recording today from the Aquarius Home Services studio. We're actually on location at the Talk North facilities. I feel kind of important to bring this show into the workplace. I normally do this from home. Very excited today for our guest. It'll be Jamie Hersch here in a few minutes. Longtime local broadcaster. Then she went national with MLB and the NHL Network. She's now out in Las Vegas. She's going to be doing some work with the Golden Knights. She works in the PWHL. She's awesome. I mean, trust me, from working with her for nearly a decade, I mean, just such a cool human being, so damn talented. She's been a host. She's been a reporter. Now she's doing play-by-play. That is a rare trifecta in our business, and it's a really cool story. Went to Champlin Park High School, so she's homegrown and played sports growing up, was a sports fan, ended up going to college at USC, became a big Trojans football fan, which I can't wait to talk to her about that, and then got her first big break working down in Wisconsin, covering the Badgers and the Green Bay Packers, and eventually landed at Fox Sports North, which turned into Bally Sports North and is now FanDuel Sports Network, as you all know. But the journey that she's had, the places she's been, the athletes she's covered, a lot of really, really cool stuff. And I believe today she'll have some breaking news for us. So if you listen to the conversation we're about to have, you'll get some breaking news from her that's related to her career, maybe some more places where you can find this talented young lady from Minnesota. As we sit here right now, we are, for me, transitioning from my hockey schedule into horse racing. We open up at Canterbury on Saturday, the 24th, so we're about a week away from opening day at Canterbury. Looking forward to a great horse racing season. If you're a listener to the show and you come out to the racetrack, I'm super accessible. I'm out with my wireless mic in the paddock where the horses are saddled, race by race, doing the race preview and making my picks. And super easy to find. Come over and say hi. Tell me you listen to Wooden Sticks. We'll have some fun, maybe pick some winners for you, try to put some cash in your pockets. If you're watching the playoffs, this is Wooden Sticks. This is a hockey podcast. Now that the Wild aren't in there, just my observations, the hockey's been unbelievable. We've been treated to some just incredible drama, comebacks in Game 7 last week from 2 goals down in the third period in multiple game and series-defining moments. Just awesome drama. And as I watch this unfold, and it looks to me like Edmonton and Florida could be on a collision course again in the final, which I'll be blunt, I never saw coming. I thought both these teams, because of what they've been through, and last year was such a grind, 7-game final. It's such a really hard 2 months of playoff hockey to come back. This will be the third straight year if Florida gets it done. It'd be remarkable. And then Edmonton just didn't look right all year. They just were off all season. But when you have Connor McDavid, the best player on the planet, you have a chance in every game and every series. And I think that's kind of playing itself out. Their goaltending's been very average. Their defense is always hit or miss. But Draisaitl and McDavid and some of that supporting cast just find a way come playoff time. And so they're on the verge of knocking out the Vegas Golden Knights. And because they beat our favorite team, I'm okay with that. Dallas, I think, is going to survive against Winnipeg. They've been able to win so far in the playoffs without their best defenseman, Heiskanen. Looks like he's going to come back here imminently. So to me, Dallas looks like the team that's going to survive there. So a Dallas-Edmonton Western Conference final. On the Eastern side, I always felt Carolina would end up in that final. The drama to me is these tortured fans in Toronto, and all of you that are Minnesota Vikings fans out there, and Jamie Hersch, who we're going to have on the show, is a big Minnesota Vikings fan. You know all about some of that torture. Now, if you go way, way back in the time machine, the Maple Leafs have been to the promised land. They've won the Stanley Cup many, many times, but it hasn't happened in a long, long time. And every year, especially in the last 5 or 6 years, they've been one of the favorites. And every year they start the playoffs and they look like a team that's ready to make a run at a cup. And every year they break the hearts of those Maple Leafs fans. And they had a 2-0 lead on the defending Cup champions. They're in Florida for Game 3. If they win that game, they're a virtual cinch to win the series. They trade leads in the game. It goes to overtime. And, of course, Florida wins that hockey game. They validate that win by coming back and winning the next game. And now there's panic in Toronto. Austin Matthews is hurt. He's playing through an injury. He's missing morning skates. And all of a sudden, Florida's got momentum. They've got Tkachuk. They've got bad blood going. It's really been interesting to watch that back and forth in that series. I think Florida finds a way, and I think Florida beats Carolina. On the other side, Dallas, Edmonton, it's a coin flip of a series, but again, McDavid's going right now, and he's the best. So I can't wait to watch it all. It's been awesome. And if you're a hockey fan, you're certainly getting paid. And today, we're going to have such a fun time chatting with Jamie Hersch about her journey, about her love for the Minnesota Twins, the Minnesota Wild, of course, the Vikings. We'll get into that. And just how she's been able to go out there and cultivate this amazing career. And she's done all of this before the age of 40. She's still a young pup. And here she is. She's just crushing it. And again, I mentioned there's a whole new challenge coming with the breaking news that you're about to get right here on Wooden Sticks. And we've got to, before we get to Jamie, talk about some of the great partners we have with the show. I want to start with my dear friend, John Schweitz, and of course, Minnesota Masonic Charities. When people think of the Freemasons, they often think of secret handshakes and unusual hats, and of course, the pancake breakfast. Minnesota Masonic Charities would prefer that you think about the work that they do right here in our community. Places like the Masonic Cancer Center at the University of Minnesota, or the Masonic Children's Hospital and the Masonic Home in Bloomington. They are just a few examples of the important work that the Freemasons support here in Minnesota. As part of the largest fraternal organization in the world, Masons have consistently answered the call when it comes to charitable needs. I am happy that Minnesota Masonic Charities has chosen Minnesota Bound and this podcast as a place to help spread the word. We look forward to learning so much more about their many programs here in the weeks to come. Can't forget about our dear friends at Onyx Maps. The opener was last weekend. Thank you, Onyx Maps, for being a great supporter of this show here on Talk North.
The weather is warming up. That means it's time to put your augers away, and it's time to grab the boat. Let Onyx Fish help you find the next best bite. The Fish app offers the most comprehensive fishing tool for increasing your success. Use the Fish app to find new places to fish and sort lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potential. Onyx Fish also shows you hot spots, lake-by-lake regulations, and private and public land ownership information. Download Onyx Fish on the App Store or go to onyxmaps.com/fish to get more information about the app that is changing the game.
And Lexus of Wayzata and Maplewood, the best car in the business. Don't forget about Lexus. We're back with the great Jamie Hersch next. All right, we're back on Wooden Sticks. As always, we are recording from the Aquarius Home Services Studio. And as I mentioned in the intro a few minutes ago, super excited to connect with a dear friend of mine in the business. That is Miss Jamie Hersch. We're catching you in Las Vegas. How warm is it out there?
Yesterday it was pushing 90. Today it dropped and it's like 70 and sunny. So it's kind of in that in-between period between spring and summer, and we're loving it.
You're a Minnesota girl, so you'll get this. This past weekend, we had weather near the 90s for Mother's Day, and this coming weekend, it's going to be 40s and 50s with rain. That is quintessential spring in Minnesota.
That's true. I know. And it just seems like it takes forever. My birthday is May 25th, and I remember every year I wanted to have a pool party growing up, and I was never able to have a pool party because it wasn't quite warm enough, but we'll get there eventually. So let's go back to where it all started. This is Wooden Sticks. We like to take it back old school. And, I think a lot of people really enjoyed getting to know you in your time working in this market. But let's go back to the days when you were in high school, Champlin Park, Minnesota. What stoked the fire for you to dream about being a broadcaster one day? I go back to when I was even younger than high school. I was in 5th grade when it was Randy Moss's rookie season and that dream season for the Minnesota Vikings. And that was the year that my sports fandom was born. My dad and I would watch every single game, even if it meant staying up late on a school night. And I was way more into watching the Vikings than my younger brother. He wanted to play football. I wanted to watch football and talk about football. And I remember watching Michelle Tafoya actually as a kid and seeing her. I think she was on Monday Night Football at the time. And thinking, wow, she holds her own. Like, she knows just as much as those other guys who are talking. Mm-hmm. And even though she didn't play football, she certainly knows football and she asks really good questions. And I never thought like, oh, I could do that. And that was really where the inspiration was born. And so kind of had that in the back of my mind throughout the next few years. And then when I got to high school, I said, maybe I should try this and see if it's something I actually would want to do, sports journalism. And so I had a buddy who wanted to go into filmmaking actually and did, but he grabbed, a home video camera. And for any kids listening, those were what we used. We didn't have smartphones. And so he had like a little camcorder and a microphone. And I would go interview with our high school football coach every week and some of the players and put together kind of like a preview for the big Friday night football game. And it would air on our little high school Rebel Report, Champlin Park Rebels. And so that was kind of where it started. And I was hooked. I loved it. I ended up working as kind of a student in the stands. I pitched the idea to the Minnesota State High School League, and I did the state high school tournament for hockey, football, and basketball. And I was so nervous and, very new, obviously, it was my first time doing it, but it was just so fun. And I'm so thankful to the Minnesota State High School League for offering that opportunity to a high school senior. And so at that point, I kind of put a little resume reel together and sent it out to a bunch of different colleges and ended up choosing USC out in Los Angeles because they had a great broadcast journalism program. And I wanted to cover national champion football teams that Pete Carroll was running at the time. And so it ended up being a really great next step for me. I got some incredible experience there, and it really helped me launch my career and land my first TV job in Madison, Wisconsin.
And I want to go back to USC briefly because growing up, I watched college football. I loved the Scenics at the Coliseum. And I was lucky enough, Jamie, I don't know, this was probably 14 or 15 years ago. I was in LA with the Wild. It was in the fall, early in the season. We were playing a Sunday game against the Kings, and we had a Saturday off in LA. Ooh. And USC had a home game. I think they were playing Colorado. And so I got to experience a full day of Saturday football at the Coliseum. And I remember telling you this when you first got hired to work at Fox Sports North, when you came to work with all of us years ago. It was unbelievable, the pomp and circumstance, from the marching band to the cheerleaders. You know what I mean? You lived it. You know it. Give our listeners just a little taste of what it was like to be a student there and either be working or at the game as a fan.
I mean, it is just what you're talking about. It's incredible and almost indescribable unless you are part of it. And anyone in Big Ten country, there's similar feel at Ohio State or Michigan, those big football schools. Wisconsin certainly has a lot to offer as well. And I'll throw Minnesota in there as well. They've got some good tailgating and everything. But yeah, it really the USC marching band is kind of one of the pinnacles of the school. And they're just so traditionally dressed, and they are well choreographed, well directed, all that. And so, they march through campus and everyone gets behind them and kind of marches together toward the Coliseum. And it really is cool. I was never a big college football fan growing up because when I was a kid, the Gophers, I guess, would have been my team, and they weren't good. So I didn't really care. I was a Vikings fan, NFL fan, but definitely not a college football fan. And that completely turned on its head when I went out to USC, became a huge college football fan. But I will say, funny enough, I love telling this story because it just shows how great my dad is. I couldn't watch Vikings games when I was out in LA because they weren't, part of the local market. He would tape on the VCR, VHS tape of the Vikings game and mail it, snail mail to me. And I would get it like Wednesday after the game. But I would still watch it. I would know what had happened, but I would still go through and watch it because that's how much of a Vikings fan I still was. Wow. And they were still really good at the time as well. So but that shows kind of the next level fandom and bond that my dad shared with me. And that's, again, kind of a big reason why I wanted to continue working in sports for as long as I can, because I got bit by the sports fan bug at a very young age, and it never left me.
Well, as a Viking fan, what are your thoughts on the transition now to the J.J. McCarthy era?
I mean, I sure hope that he can go and that he's healthy. And, I keep hearing rumblings about bringing Rodgers in, and I'm
please
like,
no.
Can we just not? Can we please not? But I understand there's, some concern about JJ's health and whatnot. So we'll see. I mean, I'm super excited. I was a Darnold fan because of USC. But unfortunately, I do think that it was the right decision to kind of turn the page and move on from him, because the Vikings need someone who can perform in the playoffs. That's right. All anyone who is a Minnesota Vikings fan cares about. And even last season, as great of a season as it was, I kind of have learned to keep the Vikings at arm's length because it's just too painful to really get behind them when they continue to disappoint in the playoffs. So hopefully JJ is the real deal, and I can't wait to see him.
I really do hope in our lifetime it happens. And I'm a Bronco fan. And I think anybody that listens to this podcast knows my allegiance lies with the orange and blue. However, I have so many friends and so many family members that have lived and died for decades with this football team. And I've lived here all my life. And Jamie, you know it, being a Minnesota girl, like this town, if that team ever took the Super Bowl down, this town would go. But I mean, it is always going to be a Vikings town.
Yes, for sure. And you're right. But I think I go back to just the heartache that we've endured. And so until we can finally climb that mountain and reach the summit, it's going to be a bit of a struggle to get fans not to panic and to actually believe, or at least this fan. I'll speak for myself. Maybe there are some really diehard, faithful fans out there, but it's hard because I mean, you know, too, because you're a Vikings fan. Like there are just so many horror stories of times where I thought for sure we were going to win and it all came crashing down. So hopefully this is the year. Let's start that now.
All right. Well, let's get back to your journey and let's get back to Wisconsin, because you finish up at USC. You end up just across the border working in Badger country. And for a Minnesota girl, that had to have a set of challenges involved there to try to pretend you love the red and white. How did that go?
I will say, again, I was never super loyal to the Gophers. So the Badger transition wasn't hard for me at all. I have cousins who went there. My brother was actually in school at the time when I got my first job there at Wisconsin. And so I'm not shy about saying I had a great time in Wisconsin. I feel almost like an honorary Badger because of how fun it was to live there, but also how great the sports teams were when I was covering them. And a lot of this business is timing. And I certainly point to that when I think of my time in Wisconsin, because for a first job to be able to cover the Packers winning the Super Bowl, as much as I hate the Packers, I will say that is the quick sidebar here. That's the struggle that I endured. And every time I had to go to Lambeau to cover a game, I would wear like a purple tank top or something underneath my outfit. So just a little hint that I was not fully down with the green and yellow. I was fully Vikings. But back to what I was saying is the Packers won the Super Bowl when I was covering them. The Brewers went to the NLCS. The Badger football team went to 3 straight Rose Bowls, and the Badger men's basketball team went to back-to-back Sweet 16. The Badger men's hockey team won the national championship. I think the women's team also won a national championship. I mean, it was literally sports heaven for a 22, 23, 24-year-old just learning to cover sports. And it was so fun on top of all the great high school sports we had to cover as well. So to be able to be in that market at that time was such a valuable experience for me to learn how to cover different sports and high stakes sports. And so I just feel really lucky and thankful that I had that opportunity.
Did you have any interaction, interviews, sit downs with Aaron Rodgers, because he was the quarterback that won that Super Bowl, I believe?
Yeah, he was. I never did a sit down. He was pretty sheltered, I guess, is what I would say. Like any big star, they only really do sit downs with the big dogs. So, ESPN or certainly the Green Bay stations. Milwaukee would get some stuff like that. But we were being in Madison, we weren't necessarily top dog in terms of media people. But I did actually get to do a sit down with Clay Matthews, which was really exciting because I covered him in college too. And so to kind of have that come full circle and keep that connection going was really cool. So
even though you're a Viking fan, be as honest as you can. And I love football, and I've yet to make it to Lambeau Field. Is it all hype, or is that something that every football fan needs to have on their bucket list?
Wait, you've never been to a game at Lambeau?
I have
Gorgie.
not. I know, embarrassing. I agree. It's on my list. I don't like the Packers, even though my mom is a lifelong Packer backer. I really don't like the Packers, so I need to get there, don't I? You do, and especially if you can go in a year where the Vikings are much better than the Packers, then it's even sweeter. But no, it's such a cool stadium, and it's such a unique place because it really is. You're driving down the freeway and you're in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you're literally looking around. You're like cornfields and cows, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's an exit, and you see this giant football stadium, and you get there, and obviously the whole town is just
nuts for the Packers. One of my best friends is from Green Bay, and it was fun to go back for her wedding and meet all her family, and all they could talk about was the Packers, and there were so many Packers things in the wedding itself. And so it really is kind of a religion in that town, but it's so unique because you can't think of any other town anywhere near that small that has an NFL team. And I remember when they had the draft, I think they doubled or tripled the size of the entire population of Green Bay just in people that came out for the draft. So you got to get there. It really is something special.
So I'm going to tee up this next segment of our conversation with this. And I've been at, now it's FanDuel Sports Network, but I've been here for 19 years, just finished 19 years covering the Wild.
Congrats.
And thank you, Jamie. So there have been two situations where I had the chance to either sit at the desk, do a segment, do an interview, have a conversation on or off camera with people that I have worked with where I knew they had the it factor and they weren't going to be here long. And so one was Jenny Taft, who's been a guest on our show. The other was you. And in both situations, Jeff Bile, our mutual friend, and of course, Trevor Fleck, at one point we would have the conversation where they'd say, hey, what do you think about the new gal? And I would say, awesome, prepared, works hard, and they're not going to be here long. And I had that conversation about both you and Jenny. And I got to tell you, just knowing the business as well as I do, and knowing that you have to be extraordinary to get to the type of platforms where you've been and where she's been, it makes me feel good that at least I was able to identify that, because I remember, maybe you don't, but I remember sitting at the XL Energy Center and you were quote unquote shadowing me. You had just gotten hired. And I remember telling Trevor Fleck, like, she doesn't need to be shadowing me. Like this young lady is going to do whatever she's going to do, but she doesn't need me. And it was great to see, the way you attack the job every day. You were so hardworking. You were so committed to the job. And then just the talent you have. It comes out every time I watch you, that talent comes out. But for you as a Minnesota girl who grew up being a sports fan, watching those games with your dad, I know the Madison thing was cool and the Green Bay thing was cool, but to come back home and to be on the network that covers Minnesota teams, that had to be a dream come true.
It really was. And honestly, I thought I would be there forever because it was my dream job. And thank you so much for your kind words, because that is truly flattering. And I did need to shadow you because it was my first time not using a teleprompter, for example, because I came from local sports where, I wrote my own stuff, but it was all in a teleprompter. And so I remember when I first started being really nervous about how unscripted television really is when you get to live sports. And the late, great Tom Hanneman will always be one of the people that just was so kind and helpful to me in my early days there. And I truly can't thank him enough. We miss him dearly. And I was just talking to Tim Laudner the other day about him, and he shared some stories about the early days of my time at Fox Sports North and how great Tom was for me as a resource. So all that to say that, yes, it was truly a dream job for sure. And so to come back and have my friends and family be able to turn on the TV and cheer me on and be in my corner, it was a big transition, and it took a while till I really felt comfortable. But man, everyone there was just so kind and encouraging, and it can be a tough business, as you know, but I never felt out of place. I never felt like my voice didn't matter. And I just, between you and Marnie Gellner and Anthony LaPanta, there were just so many people. Wes Walls for sure was such a huge part of my hockey journey in terms of learning the sport even. He was so patient with me when I was first starting. So I can't say enough good things about my time there.
I got to ask you this. So looking back, did you enjoy the Twins experience day by day or the Wild experience more? Because I never candy coated it. I liked baseball. I grew up being a Twins fan, but I really enjoyed the hockey end of it more. And that's probably why I transitioned back to Canterbury and do hockey and horses now. For you, you were so good at both and you did so much with both those teams. Maybe you can't answer this question.
Well, it is a tricky question to answer because they were such different roles. So for anyone who may not know or remember, I was actually the pregame and postgame and intermission host for the Wild, which meant, more conversation, certainly more, I'd say different prep work, but definitely less of a grind in terms of schedule, because when the team traveled, I was back in studio in Minneapolis. I never traveled. And so I also wasn't really around the team that much, though. I felt a little bit like an outsider in that perspective because, you're in the trenches with those guys when you're traveling and doing the late nights and getting into hotels at 2 or 3 in the morning like you do. You form a different relationship and bond, and that part is really cool. So while I really do love my time as a host in hockey and all that, silent reporting, I felt so much more a part of the team because I did like 100 Twins games a year. So I was busy all summer, and I did a lot of the road games and got to see some fantastic ballparks and great cities. And I knew the guys and their wives or their girlfriends and their families, their kids, and that part of it. When I got to go back a couple weeks ago and work for the Twins again for the first time in 10 years, that was so special to just even see the same ushers that are still in the same sections that they were 10 years ago, and the people running the elevators. And it was such a family, so to speak. And that part of it, I think I really enjoyed. So it's not really a great or a clear answer, but I think I really enjoyed both in different ways.
Yeah, it makes sense to me too. And there's a family of the people that work in and around the arena or the ballpark. And then you've touched on this already. There's a family of the people that make the broadcast go. And all of us that work on air are like brothers and sisters, but then you get to the crew, the people that run the truck, you get the camera operators and all the people that make everything work. And I think in a typical ball game, people don't realize there are dozens and dozens of people that are all intermingled to make that game come alive. And I think when you reconnect and come back like you did, that's got to be really extraordinary because a lot of the crew is the same as well.
Yeah, a lot of the crew is the same. And it's fun because I've been able to go back for the Wild and Fox Sports North, Valley Sports North. What is it now? FanDuel Sports. I'm losing track. But I've been able to go back. They've been generous enough to kind of bring me back for the past, I think 6 or 7 years for Hockey Day Minnesota to host. And that has just been such a treat as well, just to kind of pop in and reconnect with so many of those camera people and the audio people and everyone behind the scenes. And that's, you can take the girl out of Minnesota, but you can't take the Minnesota out of the girl kind of thing, So I go back and it still really is like home. And I'm so happy that I get to kind of hang on to a piece of that, even though I've kind of been all over the country since then.
You have. And I want to get to that decision because, there are always crossroads in our careers. When you work in broadcasting, there are opportunities that may or may not happen where you're asked to, do you want to move? Do you, as a Minnesota girl, do you want to pack up and move? And so you established yourself in this market. You did all these great things with the Twins and with the Wild, and now comes a crossroad. And so the NHL Network gig comes up. That experience for you, how hard was the decision? And obviously it worked out great, but at the time, how nervous were you?
I was very nervous. I remember my first day at NHL Network, opening night, and I was on the late night show for years and years and years. So on the fly, late night highlights. I'd get home at 2 a.m. most nights because it's East Coast time. And so, we wait for all those West Coast games to finish up and then do the highlight show. But I remember just all day sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting, like, how can I do this? I just want to go and do it already. And it didn't take too long for me to really feel comfortable. I was surrounded by, a really great crew of analysts and producers and researchers and directors. And so I loved my time there as well, as evidenced by the fact that I would end up staying there for 9 years and making another eventual decision to kind of pivot in my career. But yeah, to answer your question about the initial decision to leave, I don't think it was super difficult just because I was young enough without kids. I was married, but we were very flexible in terms of kind of chasing our dreams, whatever that looked like. And so when, a national opportunity comes up that was covering both hockey for NHL Network and baseball for MLB Network, which are the two sports that I love the most and was covering the most anyway, to do that and have the opportunity to live in the New York area was kind of a no-brainer. But as I said, I never thought I would leave Minnesota because that was my dream job before a different dream job kind of popped up. And so it was difficult to say goodbye in that sense, but I can't say enough about the reaction from everyone. I mean, I still have people now who will chime in on Twitter or Instagram or whatever. I still miss you from your Fox Sports North days, and we still cheer you on from afar. And that just speaks to kind of the quality of people that Minnesota offers, I think. Once you're there and you're kind of one of us, people are just so loyal and so kind and supportive of anything that I've really decided to do. And so I love that. And I also love that I got to stay so close to hockey, because obviously that's such a part of the fabric of Minnesota as well.
So the big city fascinates me, because I always get the question, because I've traveled so long covering the Wild, what is your favorite place? And without a doubt, it always is number one, New York City with a bullet. And I mean it like with a bullet. New York City, Madison Square Garden, the shows on Broadway. But I got to tell you, my response is always the same. A week there, which we get a lot of times because we play the East Coast teams in consecutive fashion, or even a weekend there is spectacular. But I living there, I said, with my attention span and how I get distracted, I don't know how. What was that like, though, moving there from the Midwest and being a part of the hustle and bustle of that big city?
It was awesome. I mean, to be fair though, I've always been a New York person. I remember going there in high school for the first time, and my older cousin lived there. She went to Juilliard for flute and ended up joining a symphony orchestra out there. And so I fell in love with New York City at a very young age. And so to be able to live there and experience it, especially before kids, when we could do whatever we want, whenever we wanted. It was really, really special and really fun. And we actually lived in Hoboken, which is New Jersey technically. And so it's right across the Hudson River. So we could see the hustle and bustle of it all, but we were removed enough from it that it wasn't as hectic as kind of living in the city. I'm not so sure I could have lived full time for 9 years in New York City, but it was so great to have it at our disposal, a 10-minute ferry away or a 10-minute bus ride, 10-minute subway ride. So it was so accessible. And my husband worked in the city almost the whole time that we lived there. And so it was just such an incredible experience. And we were very, very sad. There were a lot of tears shed when we said goodbye to Hoboken and headed out west to Vegas, where we are now. Yeah,
big change, clearly. And the Wild, the last handful of years have stayed in Hoboken. And so we've done the ferry thing across the river. And that, to me, as a visitor, is part of the charm of staying in Hoboken. You can see all the hustle and bustle, and then you can take that ferry right over. You can spend the day in the city. And, New York always delivers. I mean, Jamie, the restaurants, the shows, every year it delivers. And, when the Wild schedule comes out here in the summer, it's the first thing I do every year is I look for when we're playing the Rangers, circle that date, because for me, it's my favorite trip of the year. Every single year. We go to some fantastic places, but to me, that's my very favorite. Along the way, you've covered a bunch of whether it's all-star games, winter classics. I mean, you've been right there with some of the biggest events that the league has put on. Any of those events, as you look back at your time with the NHL Network, that maybe stand out above the rest?
I will always say covering a Stanley Cup final is the ultimate privilege. I mean, it's just so special. And anyone who is a hockey fan at all probably knows what I'm talking about, but it's the hardest trophy to win in sports because the grind that these guys go through. I mean, the 2-month playoff run is unheard of. It's ridiculous. And after a 6-month season, especially. And so to see and to see the faces of and to talk to the guys who finally win the Stanley Cup and the emotions that just pour out of them. I mean, it's amazing. I get goosebumps even thinking about it because even just as recently as last year, talking to Paul Maurice, I mean, it was one of my favorite interviews of all time because he just, first of all, is such a great guy to interview, but also he had worked his entire life, 3 decades of coaching and did not win the cup until finally last year. And so that was just, that's one that stands out for sure. And especially the way in which it went down, where Florida had a 3-0 lead and then Edmonton won 3 straight to force Game 7. And then the Panthers eventually won at home. I mean, the whole thing was just so special to be a part of. And the only other one I'll throw out there is Alex Ovechkin winning his first Stanley Cup in Vegas, actually. And I remember later that night, we were out in the Bellagio because nobody slept that night. And broadcasters, players, didn't matter. We all had a fun night in Vegas. And I ran into Barry Trotz, who was with all of his childhood buddies. And they were just hanging out in some of those chairs, like kind of in the lobby area of the Bellagio. And we probably sat and talked. It was Kevin Weeks, Anson Carter, and me. And we sat and talked with Trotzy and his friends for probably an hour. And he was just so charming as well. So I think those two moments, that Stanley Cup championship and then this most recent one, those stand out as ones that I'll remember forever.
You mentioned the Paul Maurice one, and I got to tell you, I took that interview in and I watched it, and then I rewound it and listened and watched again. It was great the way you guys connected, and then his commentary, just you could feel the weight being lifted off of his shoulders.
Right.
Sports has that way of doing things, right? We just saw it at Augusta with Rory McIlroy, the lifelong challenge of getting the career Grand Slam and how much it matters to these guys. And then when Paul Maurice is talking about having his family's name on that trophy and what it meant to his mom and dad and the work they put in, to me, that's the best part of our jobs, is to be there for those moments where it isn't just about the coach or the player. It's the entire family that have made all these sacrifices. And this is the top of the mountain, Jamie, and you are right there, whether it's in the locker room or on the ice. That is what makes our job just magic to me.
Totally. Yeah. And it reminds me when you're talking about families and stuff, I got to talk to both the Tkachuk brothers right on the ice after Matthew won last summer. And it was really cool to hear from Matthew. It was cooler almost to hear from Brady, because he was just as happy for his brother as you would imagine him to be for himself. And that's just so unique and so amazing, because Brady, I'm sure, wants it just as badly, and until this year had never even been to the playoffs. And so that was really cool to talk to both of them together. And then Keith, Big Walt, was right next to me. He didn't want to do an on-camera interview because I think he had some fun. But he was just, tears pouring down his face, just so emotional to see his son in his ultimate glory. And what a cool thing for that family. And, I know they're polarizing for a lot of fans. People who don't have them on their team are not big fans of the Tkachuk brothers, but they are something special. And I'm a big fan of theirs.
I am too. And they are really good for the game of hockey and the exposure they bring. I get the angst that some of their rival teams have and their fans, but I'm telling you, those two guys specifically are so good for the game of hockey. So now,
and come the Olympics, oh man, everyone's going to be a fan of Brady and Matthew in the United States.
Buckle up. It's going to be fantastic. So now you mentioned Vegas. For our listeners out there, take us through that process of how and why you ended up in that city.
Yeah. So long story short, I guess really since COVID, we had tried to figure out kind of where we wanted to raise our kids. And I think a lot of people during that time were in the same boat of, reassessing their lives and their values and what's important to them. And my husband is from Santa Barbara, and his whole family is scattered all throughout Southern California. My parents actually relocated full-time to Phoenix.
Oh, I didn't know that. So, okay, cool.
Yeah. So they had been wintering down there doing the snowboard life for a few years, and then they decided they liked it enough that they sold my childhood home and moved down to Phoenix full-time. And so kind of, throughout the past 5 years, I would say, we have two small kids, and we were just trying to figure out, as much as we loved Hoboken, as I mentioned, it never really felt like home or the place we wanted to raise our kids, mostly because it was a 3-hour time difference and a cross-country flight to see all of our family. And it's hard, as anyone with kids knows, it's really hard when you are so far removed from all your family. And so we started looking at places. We thought LA would make sense, but to be honest, the more we went and looked at places in LA and the cost of living and all of that, we were like, we don't really like LA that much. So what's closer to LA than New Jersey, but not LA? So we started looking, in the Bay Area. We looked at suburban Phoenix for a while, and we kept coming back to Vegas, and specifically suburban Vegas, because I think anyone who thinks about Vegas thinks about the Strip. And I certainly remember thinking, as a younger adult, like, who lives in Vegas? Who's from Vegas? That's weird. And it is, I guess, if we only had the Strip. But there is so much more to Vegas than the Strip. And where we live is about 25 minutes north in this beautiful community called Summerlin. It's just as normal a suburb as Plymouth, Minnesota is. But there happens to be a crazy Disney World of casinos 25 minutes away if you want it. But we live a very normal life in the mountains. It's gorgeous here, and we're a 4-hour drive from either my parents or his family. So we're kind of right in the middle where we're closer, but not too close either, if you know what I mean.
I do.
And we really loved it. And another big part of that too was I did want to keep working in sports if possible. And sports are really starting to come on strong here in Vegas. Obviously the Golden Knights, that was my number one goal, was to work for them. And they've been fantastic. We live 5 minutes away from the practice facility. All the players and coach and the staff and everybody lives in Summerlin too, because it really is a great community. And so I'm lucky enough to work very freelance and part-time for the Golden Knights. They've been great. And I'm hoping to do some work with the Aces later this summer as the WNBA team that's really had a lot of success here as well. And then eventually, the A's, if they're going to still be called that, but the baseball team will come to Las Vegas. And I'm sure they'll get an NBA team as well. The Raiders are here, which I can't quite get on board with. Although now that Pete Carroll is the head coach, I'm definitely a little bit more incentivized to root for them. But yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity out here, and it's really a beautiful part of the country. Yeah, the summers are hot, but there's summer vacation for a reason, and we can go back to Minnesota. We can go to California. We can get away from the heat if we need to. So we've really enjoyed it. We've been here almost a year, and definitely feel like we made the right decision for our family.
I didn't think about all those other teams that are likely going to come there, because having just been there during that playoff series, the baseball team is coming, and I heard all about the basketball situation and how that's likely going to happen in the next couple of years. And it makes sense with the amount of visitors they get. They clearly can support so many teams, and they have great fans. Like the hockey rink, as you know, is spectacular. That is a great venue. Those are great fans. It really is a cool place, and I have friends that live out that way, and they say the same thing you say. You can. The Strip is the Strip, and you're always going to have, if you want to go down there and gamble, if you want to go to a show or a concert, it's there. But really, if you're 25 minutes away, it doesn't matter. You're doing your own thing. And I've seen your town because I've been to that practice rink. It is gorgeous. So that's really cool. In our business, though, most people do one thing or another. You proved yourself in all markets to be able to host and report. And now the trifecta, which is super rare in this business, you've now started your journey as doing play-by-play, and the PWHL has been a big part of that, not exclusively. Number one, I was lucky enough to have the chance to work a few games this year after attending a few as a fan the year before. So excited about the league where it is now, and more importantly, where it's going. But doing play-by-play, I've done it, and I don't enjoy it. It's stressful as hell. And I got to tell you, I mean, seriously, impressive that you can do it. And what's that been like to transition to that part of the job?
I tell this to people all the time. It is the single most challenging and most exciting thing I've ever done in my career. And I love it. I'm addicted, I guess you could say. That is my focus, is I want to dive deeper and deeper into getting better at play-by-play, because I started it almost as a challenge to myself of, I could probably do this, right? Like, why not? And it was such an interesting conversation I had actually with one of our former bosses, Tony Tortorisi. I'll give him a shout out, because he had asked me maybe 5 years ago now, have you ever considered doing play-by-play? And I said, no. And he said, why not? And I didn't have an answer. And the more I thought about it, it kind of bothered me that the only reason I thought that I couldn't do it was because I didn't see or hear any other women doing it. And that was like, wait, why? But why? I guess, people have preferences. Well, they like a male voice. It's deeper. It's easier on the ears, this, that. But that's not a reason not to try something. And at the time, I think this was right before Leah Hextall had started with ESPN. So she was doing it as well. And she was really the only woman. And I thought, well, I think we need more women out there at least trying it, right? Because eventually what the goal is, like, that there's a spectrum where people have their favorite play-by-play announcers, and people have guy play-by-play announcers that they can't stand. And then there's a bunch of people in the middle. But if there's only 1 or 2 or 3 female play-by-play people, like that's not enough of a sample size to really give us a fair crack at it, I guess I would say. So to anyone out there who's like, oh, I can't stand female play-by-play, whatever, like try to open your mind a little bit and just be open to hearing different voices that are women's voices, because I think eventually we'll find some women that will have a lot of success in that role, I think. And there's a young woman who's a friend of mine who's actually so talented and so good at play-by-play, Kenzie Lalonde. She's up in Montreal. She lives in Montreal, but she just this year started calling, I think like 10 or 15 Ottawa Senators games for TSN. And she is our best play-by-play voice in the PWHL, yes, I would say as well. And so that's where, you can hear her on the playoffs right now, and she'll be calling the finals for the PWHL with Cheryl Pounder as well. So that is one person that I really look up to and admire. And she and I have talked many times, and it's just really about getting reps. And so that's kind of where my focus is now, is trying to get as much exposure and as many opportunities to grow as possible. And the PWHL has been fantastic for me for that. Despite me living across the country, they fly me out to New York. They fly me out to Boston. I've gone to Minnesota a couple times this year to call games. And so they have been willing to kind of foot the bill, I guess, to continue to give me those opportunities. And I am so, so grateful for that. And then that's actually led to a new opportunity that I haven't even told people about. So some breaking news for you on your podcast.
This is outstanding.
For anyone who's made it 40 minutes into our conversation. I am actually this weekend going to be calling my first NWSL matches, which is the National Women's Soccer League. And so, they reached out a few months ago and asked if I'd be interested. And I am not super familiar with soccer, but I have worked my tail off to make sure that I will be okay and serviceable. And so I'm doing a doubleheader actually on Saturday. I know. Welcome to the league. Here's 4 teams to learn. Go for it.
That's incredible, Jamie.
Yeah. So the next 2 weekends, I have 2 games this Saturday, and then next Friday and Saturday, I'll be going out as well to a couple games. And I'm really excited to just keep trying to lean into this, whether it be hockey or soccer or who knows what else. I certainly just appreciate any opportunity I can get, and we'll see where it goes.
What channel are those soccer games on so our listeners can watch?
Yeah, so they're kind of all over, which is really cool. The NWSL has done a great job of partnering with almost every major network. So a lot of their games are in ESPN. One of the games I'm going to be calling is on Ion, if anyone gets Ion. I know that they're all streamed live for free on NWSL's website. It's on NWSL Plus, which is free for anyone who creates an account. And then I think one of them might be on CBS Sports as well. So I'm not even really sure. That's how new I am at this.
So cool, man.
But I'm
Congrats.
really excited.
That's so cool. And that's a perfect way to end that part of the show here, because you mentioned it. We were 40 minutes into it. Now we can sell breaking news when I put this out on social media. And I know you have a ton of fans here, so that's going to be really exciting for them. And I won't spoil it. I'll let them listen to the podcast and get there. But Jamie, our final segment's called the Hat Trick Hot Seat, and we do this with all of our guests. It's 3 quick questions. There's no wrong answers. Gives us a chance to get to know you a little bit off the microphone. And I'm going to buy you a little time on the first one because it's a hard one. And I'm going to preface it by saying this. It's an actor-actress thing, and it's sitting down to have lunch or dinner with your favorite actor or actress. And one of my picks, maybe my top pick, would be Kevin Costner. And you know John Stroh, mutual friend, longtime producer, specifically for both Twins and Wild at our network. He's moved on, and now he works with both Anaheim and the Dallas Stars. But the bottom line is John's a dear friend of both of ours, so good at his job. And back when they were filming Draft Day, the football movie in Cleveland with Kevin Costner, I was on the road with the Minnesota Twins. I was in the camera well that you know well by the dugout working at Twins. At the time, they were the Indians. Now they're the Guardians. And Kevin Costner was in the ballpark and going up to the booth to visit with Bert and Dick during the ball game. And I am a huge Kevin Costner fan. So I tell John Stroh, like, dude, I know I'm supposed to be down here, doing my job as the reporter and getting all the different nuggets from the game and blah, blah, blah. But can I have 5 minutes to leave the camera well? And can I please come up to the booth and at least say hi and get an autograph from Kevin Costner. And he wouldn't let me go. He had some things scheduled within the game that I had to do, and he knew that 5 minutes for me is probably going to be more like a half an hour. Bottom line is John said no, and I still give him a hard time. And if I probably could pick one person to sit down and have a meal with, it might be my guy, Kevin Costner, because he's been in so many of my favorite movies. So I'm going to put you on the spot. If you had to pick an actress or an actor, they have to be alive now, that you could have lunch or dinner with, just to sit back and learn about their journey and what makes them tick and maybe some of their favorite gigs, who would it be?
Can I say two different ones? Because they're similar, but they're okay. So I'm really torn between Julia Roberts and Meryl Streep.
Good picks.
Meryl Streep and Julia Roberts. They're I guess similar in the sense that they're just so iconic.
Yes.
I mean, household names, amazing actresses, have done literally every kind of role. But I also, I've seen enough about them in terms of the way they've used their platform and the things they work for and stand for and speak out for. And I would just love to hear their experiences. And also like Julia Roberts as a mom, like she's just so impressive to me in a lot of different ways. And so those are my two picks.
Julia Roberts was the leading actress in my all-time favorite rom-com. And being that I'm a movie guru, self-proclaimed, Notting Hill, is that on your list?
Oh, yes. Hugh Grant. Oh, my gosh. That's so
what a
funny.
movie. What an actress.
That's so good.
Oh, she's a great pick. All right. You're significantly younger than me, so this is going to be an interesting answer. And I ask all of our guests this one question. It's a fixture here on the Hat Trick Hot Seat. I want to know your first concert. I want to know the venue, likely in Minnesota here, and I want to know who that concert was. I love the laugh.
I don't even know if you've heard. Well, I'm just
better not be like
about
a boy
my
band.
Middle school self. No, it wasn't. But I don't know if you've heard of this band because I was very into emo music in middle school and like Blink-182, Boxcar Racer. My first show was The Used. And I want to say it was at First Avenue.
Great spot.
I think so. Yeah. And The Used is, I don't think I could name like 5 of their songs now, but I remember they were the headliner, and I think Boxcar Racer, which is an iteration of Blink-182.
Nice.
They were, I think, opening for them. And so I went mostly to see them. But I was probably in 7th or 8th grade. And I kind of remember my parents being like, is this okay that we're bringing our 7th grade daughter to First Avenue? Like, is this allowed? Like, I'm trying to remember if it was indeed First Avenue. For the sake of a good story, we're going to say yes. But yeah, it was definitely The Used and Boxcar Racer.
That's really cool.
Ago.
See, that's why I love that question, because it gives us all kinds of information. This last one I think will be useful for our listeners. You lived out there long enough. If you had to pick one spot in New York City that somebody that's going out there maybe for the first time, I know I brought each of my daughters out there on a daddy-daughter trip. If there is one place that our listeners need to go when they go to New York City, in your opinion, having been there for nearly a decade, what is that spot?
There are so many.
I know.
It's really hard.
It's a hard
you could
question.
literally ask me
that.
which neighborhood, and I could pick one spot in each neighborhood of New York City because there's so many amazing spots. But we always gravitated toward the West Village, that and Greenwich Village, NYU area. Mm-hmm. I almost went to NYU. I chose USC over NYU, but I've already said how much I love New York City. And so that vibe of the West Village, I mean, every single place that you walk by is somewhere that you would want to go and have a drink or have an appetizer or get dinner, like everything. It's just endless. Every time that we would, have a date night or something, we would just take the subway over and just get off at Christopher Street, which is in the West Village. And we would just walk until we found something that looked cool, which didn't take long. So I would say, get out there, go to Washington Square Park. They always have, different acts of music or anything going on. There's performers, there's comedians. The Comedy Cellar is there, which is fantastic. Every single night, you're going to find someone that just makes you laugh your head off. And there's my favorite one of our hobbies was going to speakeasies because that was a big deal at the time. And so we would try to find different little speakeasies. And my favorite one is probably a place called Up and Up. And it's actually downstairs because they're ironic. And that's right by NYU as well. They have the best cocktails in New York, in my opinion. And then I'm trying to think of, I can't even give you one place for dinner. Like it's too broad of a question. There depends on what kind of food you're looking for. But I would just say walk around the West Village, find whatever your heart desires, because it will be there.
Couldn't put it any better. And having been there with my daughters, Greenwich Village, there was always those purse hustlers where they have the knockoff purses and you have to go into this room. But we did it. Like they my girls had their money saved and they were going to get their little knockoff Louis Vuitton, whatever it was.
Yeah. And
it's such an experience, right? Like, and dad has to go with to make sure everything's on the up and up. But no, that city, there's something for everybody. For me, it's Central Park. But again, it's an obvious one, right? But I mean, there are so many little tentacles inside of that big location. And then you get in there and you just can't believe how big Central Park is and how beautiful it is.
Oh yeah. I got engaged there actually.
No.
My husband proposed. Yeah. We were living in Madison, Wisconsin.
Go.
We went there for vacation. It was his first time to New York and he proposed in Central Park.
How cool. Yeah. The more I learn about him, the more I like him, by the way. That's a hell of an idea. No, really, that's a great idea. And thank you for sharing all the great stories today. We're going to watch you with the soccer, a new challenge. I know you'll crush it, but bottom line is thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Jamie, thank you for doing this.
Thank you. It was great to catch up, and I wish you all the best too, and hopefully I'll see you more on some PWHL next year.
I hope so too. That is the great Jamie Hersch here on Wooden Sticks with breaking news today, something we haven't had in a year of doing this show. So we found something new and exciting, and I'll be back after a quick break to put a close on the show. Welcome back to the show. Yeah, that was really cool and good for her with this new challenge. I can't even imagine doing a doubleheader of soccer in one day, being the fresh face and learning all those rosters and the jargon that goes around with it. But I watched Jamie up close in our time together for nearly 9 years, and she doesn't do anything without putting the time in, the preparation in. She's got an unbelievable work ethic. She's done it all because she's talented, but there's a lot of work that goes in behind that talent, behind the scenes. And I got to see it firsthand, and so extremely proud to be her friend. So extremely proud of what she's done and where she's going and how she does it, man. And you can tell when she's, doing the gigs she's doing, the love she still has as a Minnesota girl for her hometown teams. Even in her social media post, I strongly encourage you to follow her on all those platforms. She's terrific on that end of things too. She just has a really, as you could tell in our conversation, a really easy way about her. And she's confident without being cocky. She's skilled. And I just love the girl. And I'm just really excited to see this soccer broadcasting opportunity play out. And of course, connect with her every time we get to Vegas. It's usually at least a couple times a year. And, to go out and be able to see Jamie working with the Golden Knights and crushing it like she always does will really be special. And so look forward to many more times connecting with Miss Hersch, and really appreciate her coming on the show today. We're gonna crank it up here in the next few weeks. Next week I'm going to be on the road, so it's going to be a little hit or miss as to when we get the next show recorded. It'll be before the month is out, I promise you. And again, if you have any requests, please send them my way on Twitter. The best place to connect with me at Gorgamatic21. And if you have any friends or a family member that wants to have their business elevated, we've got a guy for you. He's the White Dog. He is Andrew Heidt, AHEYDT, at talknorth.com, and be a part of our show. The show is called Wooden Sticks. You're the biggest reason we're here, the listener. Thanks for being a part of it. We'll see you next time here on the Talk North Podcast Network.